Welcome to the ultimate guide to IELTS reading. Whether you take IELTS academic or general training, you'll learn how to use the English skills you already have to find more answers and get a higher score. These strategies helped thousands of our students reach Band 7, 8, or even 9, and I share them all absolutely for free here on YouTube. I'd like to start with a simple way to answer more questions that every student should use. But first, let me give you a quick overview of how IELTS reading is structured and scored. IELTS reading lasts 60 minutes. You have 40 questions divided into 3 sections, and each section gets progressively harder. In IELTS Academic, each section has one long passage, and the topics can be quite academic, biology or psychology. In general training, the earlier sections may have 2 or 3 shorter, more practical texts, and the final section has a longer passage. For IELTS Academic, 23 correct answers give you a Band 6, 30 a Band 7, and 35 a Band 8. For general training, the questions are a bit easier, so you need more correct answers for the same band. 30 for a Band 6, 34 for a Band 7, and 38 for a Band 8. The exact numbers can shift slightly between tests, but the key point is this. You can afford to get some questions wrong and still reach your target band. Now, knowing your numbers, the first question is this. How do you use your 60 minutes to actually reach that number? Well, let me show you something. If we open an official Cambridge test, the very first line reads, you should spend about 20 minutes on questions 1 to 13, basically on the first section. And then the same for sections 2 and 3. 3 sections, 60 minutes, 20 minutes each. Sounds fair, right? But it doesn't work. Section 1 is the easiest. Section 3 is the hardest. The vocabulary tends to get more difficult, and you're increasingly asked to identify subtle meaning, and you often need to read a lot more to answer a single question. So that's something you may not expect. Let me show you. So in section 1, when you do true, false, not given, you can often prove the answer from a single sentence. A couple of lines is enough. But in section 3, where you get yes, no, not given questions, and you're judging the writer's opinion, you may need to read a whole paragraph, sometimes more, just to figure out whether the writer agrees or disagrees with that statement. Or maybe the answer is not given at all. So if you give section 1 the full 20 minutes, you're spending too much time on the easier part and then rushing through the questions that need more thinking. A better split for most students is 15 minutes for section 1, 20 minutes for section 2, and 25 for section 3. That doesn't mean section 1 matters less. You still need accuracy. But section 3 needs more time and you need to protect it. So try and see if this split works for you. If your English is quite advanced, test yourself with an even faster version. Around 12 minutes for section 1, 18 for section 2, and 23 for section 3. That frees up about 7 minutes at the end to go back to questions you skipped. Which brings me to one more habit that sounds obvious but makes a real difference. If a question is taking too long, make your best guess, move on, come back at the end. Don't let one difficult question eat into the time you need for easier marks further on. Finish all the questions first and then return to the ones you left. Now the time is sorted, the next question is, when you open a passage, what do you actually do with it? But first, I wanted to tell you how to make the most out of this video. So it's part of the Ultimate IELTS Guide series, which covers each section and each task in the IELTS test. All these videos will be published in the coming weeks. And to go with it, there is a companion PDF guide which includes extra materials for each lesson, including this one. And you can download it via the link below. So you've opened the passage. What do you do with it? Do you read it first? Do you go straight to the questions? For years, I often said you don't have to read the passage first. You could start with the questions, figure out what's the way to solve that question type, and then implement it. It's still possible, but it doesn't work as well as it used to. So let me show you why. I'm going to show you where you can find answers to the 2 sets of questions we find in every test: true, false, not given, and fill in the blanks. So in older tests, something like number 16, this is general training, but the same applies to IELTS Academic, you could find the answers to the first set of questions in the first half of the passage, and the answers to the second set in the second half. A clear order. In recent tests, that pattern has broken. You might read several paragraphs without finding any answers. And then once you finish your first set of questions and move on to the second, expecting your answers to be further down, but actually, some of those answers are in the paragraphs you've already read. So the tasks overlap. And students who relied on that old habit, just keep reading forward and you'll find everything, are now losing time going back and forth, unsure where to look. That's why skimming the passage first matters more than it used to. So spend 3 or 4 minutes skimming the passage to understand what it's about and how it's organized. That way, when a later task sends you back to an earlier paragraph, it doesn't catch you off guard. You already know roughly where things are. If that skim slows you down too much, go straight to the questions. But always do one thing. Read the title and the subtitle. That takes 5 seconds and give you an idea of what the passage is about before you start. There is one more thing worth understanding before we look at the specific question types. Not every sentence in the passage contains an answer. Have a look at this. So I've highlighted all the sentences we actually need to answer the questions. The rest is context. Sometimes a whole paragraph contains nothing you need, strictly speaking. So you don't know which sentences matter until you know which question you're answering. And that's where the next section becomes really useful, because there is a pattern in how IELTS organizes its questions. And once you see it, it can save you a lot of time. If we go to the IDP website, it lists 14 types of questions in IELTS reading. And each of them tests a slightly different skill, and practicing all of them is helpful. But it doesn't mean you need to memorize 14 completely different strategies to find your answers. To locate where your answers are, you really only need 2 main approaches. And which one you use depends on one thing: whether the questions follow the order of the passage or not. Some question types follow the order. That means the answer to question 1 appears before the answer to question 2, which appears before the answer to question 3, and so on. So if you can read the first question and then start skimming the passage until you find the answer, then you read the next question, continue skimming, and so on. Other question types don't follow the order. And for those, you need a different approach. You start reading the passage. So you read the first paragraph or the first section, then you answer the question. Then you read the next section, and so on. So let me show you which is which. Questions in order. These are true, false, not given and yes, no, not given. Multiple choice with several options and one answer, and multiple choice with more options and two answers. Matching sentence endings. So this is the only matching task that's in order. Fill in the blanks, notes, tables, diagrams, summaries, sentence completion. With filling the blank tasks, occasionally a couple of answers may be swapped around, but most of them are in order. For all of this, you start with the questions, you read the passage to find each answer in sequence. Now there are questions that are not in order, which means you need to read the first section of the passage, answer the question, read the next section of the passage, and so on. These are most matching questions. Matching headings, where you need to match each heading to the statement in a box. Matching information, which section contains the following information. Also, matching features, where you match statements to names, researchers, etc. For these, the approach is the opposite. You start with the passage, you read the first section, check if it matches any of the questions, then read the next section, try to match it, and you work through the whole passage this way, and then you return to any questions you couldn't answer at the end. And one catch to watch for. Near the very end of the test, questions 38 to 40, the normal rules may not apply. Even for a question type that usually comes in order, for example, yes, no, not given. So those last couple of questions may not follow the order if it appears at the very end. So be prepared for those final questions to jump around. If the task is in order, start with the questions. If the task is not in order, start with the passage. So now you know how to manage your time, how to approach the passage, and how the questions are organized. Let's talk about keywords and how you use them to really improve your score. You've probably heard this advice before. Underline the keywords in each section, then look for them in the passage. It's good advice. But there is something most students miss, and it costs them time. Not all keywords work the same way. In IELTS reading, there are really two types. The first type is keywords that are repeated. These are words that appear in the passage exactly or almost exactly as they appear in the question. Names, dates, places, and very specific nouns tend to stay the same. If the question mentions Matt Elliott or the 1970s or feral cats, you'll usually find those exact words in the passage. You can scan for them quickly. The second type is where students lose marks. These are keywords that are paraphrased. IELTS loves paraphrasing. Verbs, adjectives, or broad ideas are often rephrased. So, inability to fly becomes flightless, or danger is a threat. Bad news becomes negative information. If you're scanning the text for the exact words from the question, you read straight past the answer. So before you start searching, it helps to look at your keywords and ask, is this the kind of word I'll find exactly, or do I need to think about what it means and look for the meaning instead? Now, let's go through the main question types one by one and look at the strategies that work for each. And one more thing before we go further. This video covers both IELTS academic and general training, but it leans more academic. I'm preparing a separate guide, IELTS reading guide for general training students, and I'll link it below as soon as it's released. Let's start with one of the most common question types, true, false, not given. You'll find it in virtually every test. These questions are about facts in the passage. Not your own knowledge, not someone's opinion, just the facts. The good news is the answers come in order, so you can work through them one by one, and here is the process. So read the statement carefully and underline the keywords. Then start skimming the passage until you find the part that relates to your statement. When you find it, slow down and compare the meaning. If these questions feel a bit confusing, understanding what each answer actually means helps. So true doesn't mean the passage uses the same words. It just means the meaning is close enough. Not exactly the same, just close enough. Even if the wording is different, the message is very similar, so the answer is true. False doesn't mean a tiny bit different, like 1% or 5% different. It means there is a clear contradiction. So the passage says something very different from the statement. And not given is the one that causes the most problems. And here is a common mistake. Students think not given means the topic isn't mentioned at all. That's not how it works. Let me show you. So say the statement is, phones have a greater impact on our stress levels than other electronic media devices. So you find the passage discussing how checking your phone is related to stress. So the topic is there, but the passage doesn't compare phones to other devices. So you can't say if it has a greater impact or not. That piece of information is missing, so the answer is not given. So not given doesn't mean the passage says nothing about this area. It just means it doesn't give enough information to decide if it's true or false. And one more tip. In a set of true, false, not given questions, the exam will usually use all three options. So one true, one false, one not given. If you end up with 5 truths in a row, that's worth a quick check. To practice this in more depth, you can download the Ultimate IELTS Playbook, which includes strategy videos for each question type with practice. And if you download it now, we'll send you an email as soon as we update this guide with extra materials for other sections of the test. The link is below. And now let's talk about the next question type. Yes, no, not given questions look very similar to true, false, not given, but it's testing something different. So these questions are about the writer's opinions, not facts, but what they think. So if the statement says, parents should help their children as little as possible, you might personally disagree, but if the writer agrees, the answer is yes. So don't use your own knowledge. Match the writer's view. The strategy overall is similar to true, false, not given. The answers come in order. You underline keywords, you locate the relevant part of the passage and compare the meaning. But there are 2 differences worth knowing. First, the language tends to be more complex. With true, false, not given, you can often prove your answer with a single sentence, maybe 2. With yes, no, not given, you may need to read a whole paragraph to understand the writer's position properly. And this is one reason why section 3 is harder from the IELTS point of view. Second, not given works slightly different. If the writer discusses the topic but gives no clear opinion, no approval, no criticism, no judgment, the answer is usually not given. The next group of questions is fill in the blanks. It asks you to complete notes, a table, a diagram, a summary, using words from the passage. So the first thing to check is the word limit. 1 word only, or no more than 2 words. This is a strict rule. If it says 1 word and you write 2, you lose the mark even if the meaning is correct. So these questions mostly come in order, though occasionally a couple may be swapped around. So here is the process. Read the title and subheadings of the task. This will tell you which part of the passage to look in. Then look at the grammar around each gap. If there is an article like a or an before the gap, you need a singular countable noun. If there is no article where you would expect one, the answer is probably plural or uncountable. When you think you found the right word, put it in the gap and check, does it make sense and is the sentence grammatically correct? And one very common mistake, never include a, an, or the as part of your answer. If an article is needed, it will already be in the question. Next, multiple choice with one answer. 4 options, 1 correct. These come in order. The main difficulty with these questions is that several options will be mentioned somewhere in the passage, and you will recognize vocabulary from 2 or 3 of them, but only one matches the meaning of what the passage actually says. So don't choose the first option that looks familiar. Read all 4. Compare each of them to the passage. Cross out the ones that don't match, and sometimes the question tells you exactly where to look. You might see, according to the first paragraph, or a specific name like Richard Dawkins. If you highlighted names and dates when you were reading the passage, you'll find these quickly. And because multiple choice questions come in order, you can use the location of one answer to predict the next. Let's say, if question 27 is in the first paragraph and question 29 is in the fourth, then question 28 is somewhere in between. There is another version of multiple choice, 5 options, 2 correct. The general approach is the same. Read, locate, compare, eliminate incorrect options, find your answer. But there is one difference. In multiple choice with 2 answers, the options may be discussed across several paragraphs, not just one. So you might need to read quite a lot of text to confirm both answers. These questions often appear at the end of a section, which means you're expected to have read most of the passage by the time you reach them. And if you can't find both answers quickly, finish the rest of the test and then come back. The next question type is matching information, and it's quite different from all the questions we looked at so far. The instructions read, which section contains the following information? You have a set of statements, and you need to match each one to a section of the passage. Always check for this line. You may use any letter more than once. If it's there, it usually means one section contains 2 answers, or at least you use one of the answers twice. Now, this task looks very similar to matching headings. Both involve sections of the passage. Both ask you to connect sections to something in the question, but they test different things, and confusing them leads to mistakes. With matching headings, you need to find the main idea of the paragraph. With matching information, to find a specific detail. And actually, one of the traps used in matching headings is when one of the options mentions a detail from one of the paragraphs. And because you found the detail, you may think that's the answer. But in matching headings, we are looking for a heading. So we are summarizing the paragraph, and if something is just a detail, this is not the answer. In both matching headings and matching information, answers are not in order. So you start with the passage. Read section A, check all the statements. Does any of them match? If yes, that's the answer. If not, don't worry, move on to section B. Work through the whole passage this way. So not every section will contain an answer. Once you finish, return to the questions you couldn't match the first time round and do it again. Sometimes you may need to do 2 or even 3 rounds, but the more options you eliminate, the easier it will be to answer the remaining questions. Now, there is another matching task you should know about. Matching features gives you a list of options, usually names of researchers, organizations, or professions, and a set of statements. You match each statement to the correct option. Again, check for you may use any letter more than once. If it's there, at least one option will probably match 2 statements. So these questions are not in order, so don't start by looking to answer the first statement. It's a waste of time. Read the options in the box first. If they are surnames, highlight those surnames in the passage. Then read all the statements so you know what you're looking for. Now scan the passage for one name at a time. And when you find it, slow down, read everything connected to that person, check if it answers any of the statements. Sometimes you'll find a name, but the information around it doesn't match any statements. That's fine. Keep on scanning for the next name. Next, matching sentence endings. This task seems to have become more common in recent tests, and there is one very important thing to know about it. Matching sentence endings is the only matching task that comes in order. So that changes the strategy. Unlike matching information or matching headings, where you read the passage section by section, here you work top to bottom. So the first statement, the next statement, and so on. So read the sentence beginnings first, underline your keywords, then read all the endings. Pay attention to the ones that look similar to each other, because that's where the test tries to catch you. Find the relevant part of the passage for the first beginning. When you find it, slow down and compare the passage with each ending. Several may sound possible, but only one will match both the meaning and the grammar exactly. Don't pick an ending just because the vocabulary looks similar. And if you're stuck between 2 endings, write both down, move on. By the time you've answered the other questions, some endings may or will be used up and your answer will become clearer. So now you know the strategies, but the part that actually decides most reading scores is not the exam day. It's how you practice at home. And here are 3 habits that can protect you from easily avoidable mistakes and help you get a higher score. So habit number 1, use the right practice tests. The official Cambridge IELTS books are the closest thing to the real test. So that's where I would start, and I'd focus on the latest books. Older Cambridge books are still useful. They can take you most of the way. But some of the newer patterns in reading, like the less predictable answer locations we talked about, they only show up in the more recent books. If you want your practice to feel like the real exam, the latest Cambridge tests are better. And I'd be careful with tests from other sources. Even materials from IDP and the British Council can feel slightly different because they don't write the actual exam papers, Cambridge does. So tests from unofficial platforms can be even further away, like simpler, harder, or just different in the ways they don't prepare you for the actual test. So base your practice on the latest official Cambridge tests. Habit number 2 is for students taking IELTS on paper. So don't save transferring your answers to the answer sheet for the end. Do this after each section. There is an extra reason this matters now. In paper-based IELTS, answers are now written with a pen, not a pencil. So that means corrections are harder. And if you rush at the end, you're writing in pen under pressure with no easy way to fix mistakes. A safer routine is answer in the booklet while you read, transfer to the answer sheet after each paragraph, and if you can't find an answer quickly, leave the blank space and then come back at the end. If you take your test on computer, this isn't something you need to worry about. You just select your answer on the screen. Sometimes you drag it, sometimes you type your answers straight in. And the third habit can really help you improve your score. After each practice test, don't just check how many questions you answer correctly and close the test. Go back and figure out where you made mistakes and why. Why did you choose the wrong answer? Did you not know the word? Translate it, learn it. Did you read too quickly and miss something? Well, slow down. Did you misunderstand what not given means? Well, now you know, and it's really helpful for your next test. The goal is to reach the point where you understand exactly why the correct answer is correct for every single question. The next time you won't make the same mistakes and your score will improve. I know that's a lot of information, and if you download the free guide I mentioned earlier, you'll find extra resources for each section of IELTS, and when I publish new videos from this series, you'll receive an updated version straight to your inbox. The link is in the video description box below. And now let's continue to the next video in the Ultimate IELTS Guide series, which will teach you how to write IELTS essays. And I'll add the general training reading video here as soon as we release it. Thank you so much for watching me today. Good luck with your preparation and your exam.